about being out here too. So right next to the place I work at, they have a dog training camp right there. I don't know if you can see it. There's some squad cars right through that bush. But I guess during the summertime, you could see a bunch of dogs being trained and going through the whole course. The other day I did see a couple, but it wasn't that nice. Right now it's 36 degrees here, roughly. That's not totally accurate, but I mean everything's melting, creating some nice puddles and mud, which is fun, but they complain a lot about it here. How's it going, everybody? So I'm currently driving. Yeah, it's a beautiful sight too. Currently driving Outlander Sport SE. Nothing spectacular. I mean, it's not really sporty by any means. The body style is very sporty, but in terms of acceleration and speed and power, it just doesn't have it. What it does have though is a space. Now this is, I'm about 6 feet 4 inches tall, and this is the amount of space that is in the rear seat. Now granted, it's not, you know, a luxury vehicle by any means, but for most adults, kids, that's a pretty good sized back seat. I wasn't a huge fan of the Outlander Sport of the last generation, or whatever you want to call it, but the Outlander Sport now is incredibly stylish, I'd say. It's a lot nicer front fascia. The back needs work, in my personal opinion. It's just not as nice. Yeah, it's a security company. It's just not as nice. It's dated. It's extremely dated. The rear tail lights, I don't have them on right now, but as you can tell, it looks like a early 2000s vehicle at best. They did upgrade the bottom there where the rear exhaust is. It looks slightly different. By the sides, it looks different. One thing that I will say though is driving this, getting in and out of it constantly. If you're driving it and you know you drive several miles, it's not a huge worry, but getting in and out of it constantly, it is strainful. Hurts my back a bit. Now in the snow, this car is amazing. How's it going, everyone? All right, so the topic of discussion today is how to get out of debt, more specifically student loan debt. So I was talking to a coworker of mine yesterday. Let's see if he's gonna focus. Okay, perfect. So I was talking to a coworker of mine yesterday, and the topic of discussion with him was school is stupid, you know? A big common thing that people say. Typically, it's people that heard from somebody else, you know, that may have student loans. Regardless of the situation, for whatever reason, they got student loans and they just, it didn't work out for them for whatever reason. A lot of times what happens is, and this is just from my research, a lot of what happens is people get into a career or, you know, study something that isn't really going to get them all that they want, or a job that pays well enough to pay off student loans. So a lot of times, you know, boomers love to call these millennial degrees. Sometimes it'll be music, art, what have you. Now, one important thing to realize is when researching your degree, now that is very important to do, research your degree. Now, when we were kids, everybody would say, you know, do what you want to do. In other world, or people are saying you're an idiot for doing what you want to do. This isn't totally true now, but also if you don't research what your career is and do your homework in regards to how difficult it is to get into that career, what the entry-level pay is, what the likelihood of you becoming successful in that career, whether it be music, whether it be art, or even the more common ones, whether it be business, whether it be, police work, etc. You cannot expect, and I've said this previously, you cannot expect to get into a career in IT in a farm town. That's just not going to happen. Um, Farmers typically need to spend as little money as possible on their farms, so they're not going to buy a whole lot of techie equipment. It's just now there is technical farms that are owned by corporations, but that's an entirely different story, and the likelihood of you finding something like that is not very high. Now, if you are in a big city, in a big metro city, you will find IT work. That's no problem at all, especially with everything going into technology. I'm sure you've heard of it. Business is another one. It's very saturated. So that means a lot of people are going for business degrees because that is I wouldn't say the easiest to get into, but that's the most common, for whatever reason. It may be because, people want to own their own business or be their own employer at some point. But really what it teaches you is a very broad subject. You might get into Target or Walmart and be stuck there with little to no growth potential. It's not to say that it won't teach you anything, because if you want to be your own business owner, then it's a good career to get into. Now, realistically, when you think about it, any career, any degree, anything you do in life needs to be planned out. You need to know what you're getting yourself into. You can't necessarily technically you can walk into and risk everything. I know a lot of YouTubers that do that. So let's use YouTube as a career as an example. Now, a lot of YouTubers take the risk of making YouTube videos continuously and quitting their jobs or working very little at normal jobs, as they say. That is a viable risk if you know your material, if you have content planned out. So let's say you become a YouTuber, okay, and you don't have a plan. Likelihood of you continuing YouTube because it doesn't meet your expectations right away, or if it doesn't meet your expectations in a year, you will quit. If you plan stuff out, you do your research. A lot of people will say that YouTube is a very hard, very plausible, however, career to get into. Some YouTubers have become an overnight success because they had success on social media or whatever it may be, and they started creating blogs, and they were all of a sudden YouTubers. Some people, on the other hand, are in a competitive field, like, for example, automotive journalism. There's a lot of very successful YouTubers in that. So it's going to be a little bit difficult. The more people there are, the more competition it creates, etc., etc. But there are people that will watch your videos and eventually maybe able to make it rounds if it's good content and you have, again, planned your content and you have structure. But same goes for schooling. If you do not plan, if you do not research your education and your field that you're getting into, you may be very disappointed and also turn into one of those people that say school is stupid, it is the dumbest thing you ever invested in, and student loans are ridiculous. Okay, say you don't plan, and that's the person you become. Say you do plan, and you become the person that did their research, knows what the likelihood of them getting hired in their area, or are willing to locate for a better area, for a better career, and to get into their career field and their field of study. For example, I'm going to use my field of study as an example. IT. I relocated for several reasons, in part because I knew that the farm town and the manufacturing town that I was working in would not accommodate my needs. There's a lot of IT fields, granted, or a lot of IT jobs, granted, but a lot of the people that are in those positions are basically in there until they retire, and I don't have the time to wait 10, 20, maybe even 50 years by this point. So I relocated to a metro area, just outside a metro area, because I'm not a huge fan of the city, but I relocated and I took that plunge because I did my research and I knew what it would take to get into the field that I want to start a career in. Another thing is, I also did my research in terms of my current field, which is security work. I knew for a fact that I could get a job very easily that paid significantly more. Like, for example, now the position I'm in is a regular officer. Granted, I will eventually end up moving up, but or moving into IT. I haven't fully decided yet. But the point is, I know for a fact, or I knew for a fact before I moved here, that I would be getting paid what I was getting paid as a field supervisor, which is 2 steps up from a regular officer. It's supervisor and then field supervisor. But I did my research. Now, if you do your research, it's not to say that things won't go wrong. Some people don't plan for that specific reason because they want to be prepared for whatever happens, and it's okay to be prepared and also make plans. And it's really important that you do, because if you don't make plans and you don't set goals, then you will fail. It is as simple as that. If you don't make a goal, you don't know when to quit, and the likelihood of you quitting too early is very high. If you don't make a plan, if you make a plan and you set a goal for yourself, say within 5 years you were going to get into the career field that you studied, because you're a freshman or whatever the case may be, that is realistic. Saying within 10 years getting into a field that you studied for last year is very unrealistic. Now, money isn't everything, and don't give up, okay? If you have to relocate, that is very unfortunate. You may leave family and friends behind. That may not be an option for you. So be aware of what field you're getting into. If you're in a farming town, get into agriculture. You may not love it, but you will love having money and not being broke and being able to pay your student loans. Now, again, IT is a great example. Security work is a great example as well. In some instances, it may be difficult to move up to a position where you can pay your student loans. In my case, I'm going to use my case as a great example. It may be difficult for me to pay my student loans in security work by myself with my own paychecks. Technically, it's not, because it's not a high payment. But let's say, for transparency reasons, I'm going to say I have about $50,000 in student loans by the time I graduate. I make roughly $2,000 net every month, which isn't very much, but we're thinking of gross minus taxes, minus insurance, etc., etc. So in this case, I would have to pay at least $500, and that is the bare minimum for my student loans to be able to pay them. That leaves me with $1,500 now. I'm lucky to be in a situation where I have a partner that I work with. But let's say you didn't, especially out of college when you started to have to pay the student loans. That'd be $1,500 to pay rent, which a lot of times rent is very high, especially in cities. And in certain, you could find roommates, etc. But that'd be a very long time where you'd be struggling, assuming you decide to lead a single life for the rest of your life, or whatever the case may be. So with that being said, it is wise to do your research. And also start interning or getting into the career that you are studying while still in college. I have a good friend of mine who studied and got into his career field by interning his sophomore year. And then he's still studying. He has 2 classes left to graduate his bachelor's degree in IT, and he is working for the city, making very, very good money. So, when the time comes and he's out of school, he will be debt free because he started making really good money and he wasn't worried about it. And he didn't become one of those people that say, school is stupid, because he planned out and he decided how he was going to take the best course of action to pay off his student loans. Now, there's a lot of information to retain, but the point is, plan out your career or your field of study. Plan everything out So yeah, that you know what you're getting yourself into. You're not going to be one of those people that say school is stupid because you can't pay your $50,000, $100,000 in student loans. Um, I mean, it's that simple. Plan it out, set goals, achieve your goals, and don't give up. If you have to relocate, it's very unfortunate. But really, your family, your friends aren't going to be the ones paying your bills. You are, especially your student loans. Now, if you are perfectly happy with a $15 an hour job, with a $10 an hour job, whatever you may be paid, uh, by all means, stick to it. Personally, I would say don't be too comfortable. Don't get too comfortable, because that's not a life that's surviving. You're not living a life, you're surviving, as I like to say. Um, and it's been said before, realistically. But in order to live your life to the fullest, you will need some sort of degree, or some skill. A lot of degrees are, or excuse me, a lot of skills, a lot of careers are requiring degrees now. So even if you go to school for 2 years, I know people making more than a lot of people that went to school for 4. So just do your research, and know what you're getting yourself into. Know what you're setting yourself up. Do not set yourself up for failure.